Keeper, CEO and founder of DirectSellingLive.com and owner of MLM Black Woman. I want to thank you for joining us here on MLM Black Woman and Direct Selling Live as we celebrate Direct Selling's first national Black History Month celebration. It's the first time in our history that Direct Selling actually looks to celebrate the legacy and the history of blacks in direct selling. Of course, a lot of that's being spearheaded by Direct Selling Live and MLM Black Woman because we understand what the legacy really means. All this month on Direct Selling Live and MLM Black Woman, we're going to have stories and interviews about the history, about some of the people who are black who've come through direct selling and created this proud legacy of which I speak. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to have interviews with some very prominent people in direct selling as we look at opportunities, some of the marketing do's and don'ts, what is the history of direct selling as it relates to blacks, and what is now becoming a very hot topic in direct selling, politics, and how do blacks get involved in that conversation as well. The first week, we're going to start out with Ebony Williams as we look at the best opportunities for direct selling companies to get into the black market. These are opportunities that are vast, they're deep, and they've been around for a long time, but oftentimes the black community has been underserved by direct selling companies. So Ebony Williams will kick off the very first week talking about this. Ebony Williams' background is she spent 5 years with Avon as a district manager at the corporate level for Avon, so she's very well knowledgeable. She's very knowledgeable about what the corporate view is as it relates to not only blacks but all minorities in direct selling. She will kick off the very first week, which happens to be today's show. In week 2, we're going to be looking at the marketing do's and don'ts for the black community if you're a direct selling company, as we have consultant and trainer Rhonda Dallas, one of the premier speakers in all of direct selling, and a contributing author for MLM Black Woman. In week 3, we're going to have Shakira Ali as we talk about the legacy, the real history, as we peel back the layer of direct selling and get deep into the history of blacks and the legacy here in direct selling. One of the things we're going to get into is Madam C.J. Walker, whose business model is primarily the model that direct selling actually operates from. She was the first self-made millionaire in the United States, and she happens to be black. And she created a very vast empire of Walker agents as they span the country doing what we call direct selling and network marketing. It goes back to the early 1900s, long before Nutrilite and long before Amway. So, this month, here on Direct Selling Live and MLM Black Woman, we get into black history in direct selling as direct selling looks at Black History Month. And now, first up, Ebony Williams, the best opportunities for direct selling companies in the black community. Enjoy the month.
My mother used to sell Princess House.
Joined Amway that night.
Norma siempre vendía cosas de Avon.
Oh, it must have been around 1935.
But those knives were amazing.
The one lady's name was Mary Kay, and I said, oh, cosmetics will never sell on Party Plan.
Was a single mom and created these hair care products for black women and became the first self-made millionaire in the United States. I just think that's extraordinary.
Welcome to On Air. Today we are looking at Black history and the legacy of Black history in direct selling as we celebrate Black History Month here in America. Blacks in direct selling, we have been involved for a long time, going back as early as Madam C.J. Walker, who in large part is, in my opinion, and we've talked about this for years here on direct selling, the architect of the framework of what direct selling really is. And from a black perspective, there's a lot of pride to be had there. Today, we're going to talk to you with Ebony Williams, one of the premier marketing and training consultants in all of direct selling. Spent a good bit of her time with Avon and can bring a tremendous perspective to this. We're going to talk about in the first segment what some of the black history is, some of the black legacy, some of the black challenges are. And then in the second segment, we're going to get into where some of the opportunities lie for direct selling companies. Ebony, welcome so much to this show. Hello. This is the first time that any media, to my knowledge, in direct selling has looked at black history in direct selling. And we're looking to make this a annual thing and really grow it into something much larger and going forward from this point on. As we look at black history in direct selling, give us a bit of your perspective of what that's all about, where we've been, where we are right now, and where we're going.
Okay. Well, first of all, with blacks in the direct selling market, this was basically our first opportunity to own our own companies. Mm-hmm. We controlled it all. We were the feet on the pavement. We had our own companies. And for some reason, we had a little bit of disconnect. But the black market has a huge, huge impact on all of the direct selling companies. Mm-hmm. We are very loyal. And we're brand awareness. Whereas the companies, they look at the African American market as a huge target market. And this is something that is not really put out there that much, and that's an opportunity we need to take advantage of. Mm-hmm. But forever have been so many black women and men who have gone so far in multi-level marketing companies. Yeah. And just has not been put out there. So we have a huge opportunity with this.
You know, I kind of look at it, having been involved in direct selling now for about 17 years, as when a company expands and goes into the international market, I oftentimes see that as you are leaving dollars on the floor, because there is a huge upwardly mobile black market here in the United States that's just becoming greater, certainly with disposable incomes, and yet you will spend millions and millions of dollars going overseas to learn a new language, to put together new marketing material, but then at the same time will kind of move away from some of the more prominent minority communities, and to our conversation specifically to the black community. Having been on the board of an association or two here in direct selling, it's always been interesting to me, and I'd love to get your take on this, knowing what your background is with Avon Corporate from 2007 to 2011, being a district sales manager in a very large region of the country, which we're certainly looking forward to you talking more about. How, from my perspective, they've come to me a lot of times and said, okay, Keeper, look, how do we attract more blacks into our company? Which to me, in a way, it's kind of insulting, because I look at it and say, well, okay, hold on now. We already speak the same language. We oftentimes eat the same food. We already know the culture because we're here in the United States. What makes you think that we're all that different? Yeah, there are some subtle differences. There are some nuances, but we have the same goals. We have the same desires with our family. And yet when you give them the information, we're going to do something else. We're going to move in a different direction. What's your take on that?
Well, a lot of times they're really scared to put it as it is. Mm-hmm. They're scared of the black issue. They're scared of coming out there. You know, you can't really come to, say, your 25 to 40-ish market with something cheesy. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to put together a package that is very good, and you have to come with the training and the aspect of, when I first came to Avon, I was like, what am I going to have in common with all these women?
You know, I was once in a meeting with the very top distributor with the company that I was with. And we were talking. And I asked her, I said, okay, and she's an older white woman. And she said, and I asked her, I said, okay, now that I've risen to the success that I have, let me ask you, would you have recruited me if I wasn't at this spot? She said, no. And I said, well, why not? She said, because we don't have anything in common.
Exactly.
What do you mean we don't have anything in common? She says, well, I'm white and you're black. Really? I hadn't noticed that. But it's that disconnect that does everyone a disservice here in direct selling.
Well, a lot of times it's because they don't, the people that are actually working for the companies don't actually believe what they're saying. Mm-hmm. So the different perspective is, I know that I'm a social butterfly. I need to represent something that I'm not going to be embarrassed to represent. So when I'm coming out there, I want to be able to talk to somebody and offer them tips and offer them things on things that I actually know and things that I actually use. So that's where that disconnect is for companies. They don't know how to carry that over to professional black women and men. Mm-hmm. So that is a hard thing for them.
You know, when we're talking about history and we're talking about legacy, and you know, I mentioned early on Adam C.J. Walker, and today we can look at the Dudleys over with Dudley Products, you know, Eunice Dudley, Ursula Dudley. If we're talking about women, we're talking about Dr. Tracy Lynn with Tracy Lynn Jewelry. We're talking about Nadine Walker over with Soul Purpose Lifestyle Company. I was talking to a friend of mine, a black man, a few weeks ago, and I was talking about, to me, I think that it's important that we have ownership from a company standpoint in direct selling, not just as a distributor or a representative, but from a company standpoint. And he happened to disagree. He thought that it was more important that we get the money first, which I understand, but I think from a legacy and certainly from a position of we can do this, we are just as good as anyone else, it's important. I'm very proud of the women that I mentioned, but from your perspective, having been with corporate, what do you think is kind of holding back more black ownership from a company owning standpoint as opposed to a distributor standpoint?
It's the fear of getting in it and knowing how to compete with the big people and not being scared that it's going to be taken over. Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. You said be taken over. I understand where you're coming from. I hear you loud and clear on that, which is always an issue because I deal with that as to my knowledge, only black-owned media company for direct selling here in the United States. It's something that I think about, but at the same time, in order for me to achieve what I am ultimately looking for, it's going to take a lot of people to participate, a lot of people who are diverse in so many different areas. And so the fear of having it being taken over or taken is a big one.
That is a big one because you and I both know that they can keep you up in the court system forever. Yeah. Because they have the attorneys and the money behind them. So it takes a very smart move to go out there and really you just can't start on the drop of a dime. You have to really research your information and have the team that really wants to do it. Mm-hmm. They have to want it for themselves and you not want it more for them that partner up with you.
Yeah. The perspective as a black woman in direct selling, where do you see black women and where do you all fit now, and where do you see in the larger picture where you could be going because of the opportunities which we'll be getting into in just a few minutes? Okay.
Where I think black women really could be going is very quickly to the top because of the knowledge and the way that they position themselves, and not say they, but the way we position ourselves in a manner of this is what's acceptable to me and this is not what is acceptable to me. And I don't think corporate has gotten that yet. They're kind of scared of working with someone who really has a voice.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because when we look at the growth of, let's say, Amway over the past 2-3 years, Candace Matthews, who has been on the cover of Black Enterprise magazine, she's their chief marketing officer, has done an absolutely fantastic job. And here you have this black woman with such a conservative company in many ways, where we're talking racially, we're talking politically, we're talking from a religious standpoint. And here she is, and she made our Power 50 this year. She will no doubt, she automatically will make our Women of Power list, which comes out in March, and the Diversity 30 and all this sort of stuff. But she's one of the few that if you're not an owner, like a Nadine Thompson or the Dudleys or Dr. Tracy Lynn, one of the few major black players in the executive position. So, you know, it's interesting, you know, the fear of even having us in those spots seems to be, you know, somewhat prevalent.
That is, you know what, that's a great point, because that is a huge fear for most companies. That is a huge fear, because you never know. The majority of the top execs that are behind the scene, that are right behind that top person, are black males. So you never know that. You never know that.
You know, and for me, it's such a challenge as, you know, I put together the first diversity list, trying to find the black person behind the scenes. You know, now, you know, over at Organo Gold, we have a Holton Buggs. When Mark Mason, when he was doing his work with Primerica through City Holdings, it was just very challenging to find it. Let's wrap up this segment, because when I come back, I want to get into where the opportunities lie for companies as it relates to the black community. When we come back, Ebony Williams, Black History Month here on Direct Selling Live and MLM Black Women.
When my mother used to sell Princess House.
Join them way that night.
Norma siempre vendía cosas de Avon.
Oh, it must have been around 1935.
But those knives were amazing.
The one lady's name was Mary Kay, and I said, oh, cosmetics will never sell on party plan.
Was a single mom and created these hair care products for black women and became the first self-made millionaire in the United States. I just think that's extraordinary.
Welcome back to On Air with our special guest, Ebony Williams, one of the premier trainers, consultants, and I'm probably not giving that as big a universe as it really should. She has worked with corporate for direct selling for a number of years, and specifically as the district sales manager for Avon from 2007 to 2011. We're talking about Black History here in Black History Month in direct selling. Ebony, let's just kind of go to something really, really quickly, because in the last segment we were talking a lot about executives. In terms of opportunity, and I know you want to talk about opportunity from the distributor side, but just let's touch upon this for a second, because you are such a valuable, knowledgeable person on this. Is there a story or two that you could share from an example standpoint of why it can be difficult for blacks to get into the executive positions, certainly around that whole fear factor?
Okay. One story that I know, and working with a person that I was contracted to work with, kind of knowing the background of it, I was approached and told, you may not want to give them too much information, because if they know too much,
they being
the company that of the person I was contracted to work for, that area person contacted me and said, you don't want to give them too much information because it gives them too much power. Because if they have too much power, they control too much segment of our business.
Now, I want to be sure that I'm clear now. So this person who you were contracted by said you don't want to give the company...
Not the person that I was contracted by. The company contact over the person that I was contracted by contacted me separately and said, you may not want to give too much information, because then they won't need you. And then too much information gives too much power.
Oh, yes.
And that would hurt me, because that would have too much segment of my business. So when new things would come out, if they weren't for them, they could never go across.
Now, is this very typical when you're dealing, when companies or company contact people are dealing with blacks in direct selling, that they will oftentimes say you don't want to give too much information? Is this commonplace in your?
It's a commonplace with people who want to know information. Not just with blacks. It's just with people wanting to know information, and where that 25 to 40-year-old, they were looking to own a business. And if I'm looking to own a business, I really want to know, what are my business partners looking to go forward with?
Well, from a company standpoint, what are some of the challenges that they may have, or perceived, or that they have with black executives?
Sometimes it's the thing of they want them to know more than you've had privilege to know. So, like, a lot of, from my age range, I'm 36. A lot of that segment of people is just not that large in direct selling, because we want the money quick and we want it fast. If it doesn't come in a week, it was a scam.
Right.
And teaching that age group that it's going to be putting in work. Just like if you're working at a company and they're going to pay you $100,000 a year, you're going to be working there a lot.
Right.
And you're going to be working more than 40 hours a week. So you have to look at your business as if it was their business. And you can put just as much work into it as you would with a company.
So then let's segue into, where do you see the best opportunities for a direct selling company in the black community? How do they actually find the opportunities?
When you find it, a lot of times going to the universities.
Okay.
Going to the universities, and if one of the best opportunities that I lucked upon was, I went to the university and I did like an internship and taught new students how to start their own company, which was absolutely fabulous, because they did it as grades, not as money. They participated as an internship. So they put the work into it like they were at a class.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned universities, because we could be talking about HBCUs as an opportunity, historically black colleges. The publisher of Direct Selling News, John Fleming, who is black, is very much involved in HBCUs. He actually has a very nice catalog of the history of HBCUs, and where they are, and the whole thing. So from the university standpoint, would you suggest, if you're talking about expanding the black base or the African American base in your company, to go towards HBCUs? Yes, I really think that is the big area of missed opportunity. That's actually an area of missed opportunity in terms of company ownership for someone black, being able to create, being the owner of, say, an Avon or a Melaleuca or what have you, and be able to go into the HBCUs in order to build initially your distributor base. That is absolutely correct. If you're partnering with the schools, because there's a lot of partnering programs that each company has that they can partner with the schools. And if they partnered with to train people to start new businesses, this is something that is an invaluable piece of an experience. Because this is the time that they're doing it to where you're not worried about rent being paid, you're not worried about, all of the other things. You're able to focus on making a business happen. Right. And making it successful. Well, you said something earlier, and I happened to kind of step all over it a bit, and I have to apologize on that. So I want to come back to it. You mentioned how people, if they don't get the money in 24 hours, I mean, if they're not going to the bank in a week, in 2 weeks with a $15,000 check, you didn't say that, I did, the $15 check part. They tend to, look at it as a scam, completely forgetting when they were sat down and told about it. We're talking about a 2 to 4 year plan here, and it's going to require work. It seems to me that oftentimes companies think, and this is just my experience, and I've dealt with a lot of companies. I've consulted, and for a lot of companies, they think the black community is not willing to put in the time. We're not willing to work hard to get the results that not only the individual wants, but what the company wants. And it almost seems as though they look at it as, we're not going to go there because of that reason. They're just not willing to work hard enough and long enough.
No, that is definitely not the case at all. Not the case. There needs to be a clear understanding of when money is going to come and how much money is going to come. And they need to explain it and understand it. Because a lot of times they're explaining it and they don't understand it themselves, because most of them are not getting checks. So like if I'm explaining it to you, I'm going to understand it as if I'm in your position. When am I going to get this paycheck? If this goes on from this time to this time, when will this paycheck be in my hand if I complete A and B?
But it's interesting that you're calling it a paycheck when it's you owning your own business. So in a way, it's a paycheck, but on the other side, you're an entrepreneur. You're building your business, and like with any business, it could take 2 to 4 years just to get the darn thing off the ground. And oftentimes, I think, like you're saying, the explanation is not clear enough. The explanation is not fair. It's not total in what needs to be shared. So if we're looking at universities, where are other opportunities? Headhunters, recruiting the other executives, how do companies go about this?
Well, first, I think our biggest opportunity is with the HBCUs. Because then you build, it's like you're feeding the children, and they continue to feed everyone else. They feed everyone behind them, because now it's not just a pie in the sky dream. It's actually what is. So you have real life testimonies. A lot of times you have to, when you're going, I'm looking for a test group, and you have to separate them from what you have now and keep them in a bubble. If you're looking to change that current environment that you have, it's okay to take a group of people and mentor them to greatness.
Yes. It's interesting that you say to keep them in a bubble, because, as you know, direct selling, the age of the average distributor in direct selling is far too old for companies to sustain, to grow. It just takes too long when the average age is somewhere between 45 and 50. From an industry standpoint, you kind of think, okay, we need to get younger, but then companies have that mature market that's in place that's going to be upset because now you're putting money and resources towards bringing in someone younger, just so the company continue to maintain. There are just so many opportunities, missed opportunities in the 18 to 24, to 25 to 35, the 36 to 45, and these are landing spots from a life standpoint that every company should have in place that will allow easier transitions for a distributor wherever they happen to come in. Black history in direct selling it goes a long way. We go back tremendously. With your history, let's talk about you for a bit here. As we get to wrap this up, you are extremely knowledgeable about what you're talking about. You worked at the corporate level for Avon for 4 or 5 years, 2007 to 2011. So that would be 5 years. For what is it that you do now, and how can people contact you to learn more about, how to get better with the black community?
Okay. What I do now is people call me in to train their teams, their leadership teams. Most companies have an initial fast start when you're coming in, which when I talk about the paycheck, that's what I'm talking about, because until you have that residual coming in, that is a nice paycheck in the beginning, and that's a lot of money that's usually left on the table.
Yeah, that fast start will put some money in your pocket really fast if you do it correctly.
If you do it correct. So I come in and I train your team how to do it correctly. I kind of find out actually why you're actually doing it, and not why you said you're doing it, but what your actual goal is to get to. What are you looking for to make your business happen? The way that people can contact me in, I have been very fortunate to not have the website and everything, so all that is coming together. My website will be www.ebonywilliams.net. It should be up by Friday, but you're able to contact me through email. You can do ebony@ebonywilliams.net, or you can call me on my cell. It's 337-298-9158. So I am Central Time. I'm located in Louisiana. I usually go out to anyone's team. They contract me to come out, and I'll train your team on. There's several topics that I train on.
Okay.
Whatever it is, it's best for your team. We kind of go over a plan, and I kind of show you how to make sure it's profitable for you, but your return investment is always, I make sure that you always have a return investment on your money.
Very, very, very good. So do you work with people outside of the Avon environment? Okay.
Oh, yes. It's, matter of fact, one of the stories I was telling you about the company coming to me was not an Avon. So I work with all companies. Leadership is leadership across the board.
From a Black History standpoint, this being Black History Month, and we are kicking this whole thing off. You said something earlier that the future is very, very bright for Blacks in direct selling. It becomes even brighter if companies take advantage of those opportunities, being able to recruit and market to the Black community. Any final words on the Black history in direct selling?
Yes. The best thing for Blacks that has always been true. Never wait for somebody to feed you. Always feed yourself. And that's feeding your knowledge. Don't always depend on what they're going to give you. I always make sure I get it from 3 different sources. Because then if 2 are right, at least I know I might be able to go with that one.
You've been fantastic.
I make sure I get it from more than 1 source. And I tell everybody, don't just trust my source. Get it from 2 other people to make sure. Because what I might know today is prevalent for what I know, but there might have been something that came out last night that I didn't know about.
Oh, isn't that the truth, the way information is flying. And there you have it, straight from the source. Ebony Williams, thanks so much for being with us here during Black History Month celebration for direct selling.
Well, thank you very much for offering the invitation.
You take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Welcome back. Thanks very much to Ebony Williams for all of her insights. As you can see, she's extremely passionate. She's extremely knowledgeable about that of which she speaks. Obviously, she has a lot more to say. Unfortunately, we just didn't have as much time as she probably needed. We're going to have her on later on in the year as Direct Selling Live and MLM Black Women launch their 2nd annual Diversity 30. That's a list of the 30 most powerful, most influential minorities worldwide in direct selling. And Ebony Williams will be back to talk about that as we lead up to that actual announcement. Next week, Rhonda Dallas will be here to talk about marketing do's and don'ts for direct selling companies as it relates to the Black community. What's very interesting to me is oftentimes direct selling companies think that they have to do something major to get into the Black community. Nothing could be further from the truth. We speak the language here in the United States. We primarily eat the same foods. We have the same goals. We have the same dreams. We want independence. We want self-reliance and self-assurance. We want to be able to put our kids through school. We want to be able to have freedom to do the things that we want to do. And yet most direct selling companies, if that, wait very long to really put resources into recruiting us black people. I'm sure they have their reasons, but it's interesting because when you talk to black people, we just think there's so much money being left on the table. There's so many opportunities. We've become one of the most powerful disposable income groups in all of the United States. And yet there will be a company that comes around and really takes advantage of that particular opportunity. Rhonda Dallas will be here to talk about the do's and don'ts for marketing to the black community next week, as Direct Selling Live and MLM Black Woman, along with the entire direct selling community, celebrates the history of blacks in direct selling. It's a legacy to be proud of. Have a great week.